What's up, Soul Soldiers? This is episode 26 of the Strength House podcast, and the first episode from our brick and mortar gym here in Worcester, Massachusetts. The theme of the night, the bench press. We're going to talk everything technique, how to build your weak points, how to build muscle to support the bench press, everything you could ever want to know about my favorite lift. We're also going to taste two awesome IPAs, one from Iowa, one from the beautiful state of Massachusetts. You're not going to want to miss it, especially for the tour at the end of the podcast. Stay tuned.
The Strength House Podcast, featuring Greg Robbins and Tony Bonvecchio.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to episode 26 of the Strength House Podcast. I am Greg alongside Tony Bonvec, but I gotta freeze the whole situation for a second. It's been 2 weeks since we did a podcast, and I recently learned something about Tony that I never knew before 2 weeks ago, and it's that if Tony could go by any nickname he wanted to, he would go by the name Twan. So let me restart the whole show and say,
I was wondering where you're going with
what's
that.
up, everyone? Welcome to the Strength House Podcast, episode 26. My name is Greg, and I am alongside the infamous Twan.
In case anybody's wondering, Twan, abbreviation of Antoine, spelled apostrophe T-W-A-N. That's all I wanted to be called in elementary school, but it didn't catch on until now.
Anything to do with Antoine Walker?
Oh, absolutely.
The only man that took a jump shot without actually leaving his feet.
Yep.
A legend in his own right.
Great gambler, too, I hear.
I wouldn't be surprised, but I was a big Antoine Walker fan myself. Number 8, I believe, right?
I think so, yeah.
All right. Well, we are coming off a bye week, and hopefully we're going to play better than the Patriots on their opening game. That was a massive disappointment.
Yeah.
That we don't need to dwell on. We're going to move past that. I heard earlier today that they lost their first game in seasons that end up with 3 different Super Bowls. They lost their season opener in.
Yep, we're on to New Orleans.
That basically means that means nothing, and I'm over it. And yeah, disappointing. But it's been exactly 1 week since we have moved into our facility, which we are coming to you live from right now here in Worcester, Massachusetts. The black wall behind us with some slight purple that you might be able to see. It's coming along pretty well. I haven't worked this hard in a long time from a physical labor standpoint.
Yep, it's been a lot of long days, a lot of paint fumes, a lot of paint chips, a lot of power tools that I've definitely never used before. Thank God that wasn't my main responsibility, but things are coming right along. We've been able to train ourselves. We've been able to get a couple lifts in and enough to make it feel like home, and just every day making a little bit more progress, and super excited to, I got to tell you, when we were talking earlier, the days are long, I'm tired, it's a lot of physical fatigue, but I wake up every morning really excited to come in here and keep working and getting this place rolling.
Yep, it's been really fun, and when we say that we are building this gym ourselves, we mean it.
Well, our wives may not like that too much, and Shayna
That's
may
true.
not like that too much.
That's true. We actually have been getting lots of help from our wives, some clients, parents helping us paint. But I guess the heavy labor we've definitely put in, for sure. We've moved like 100 mats. Those things are a bitch and a half.
Yep. I tell you what, I feel like my grip strength is going to come out on the winning end
how my
here.
forearms looking here. I feel like I'm just...
Like just that pinch grip, like just and having to hold on to that 100-pound mat. So I should be able to deadlift like 650 by the time this is all over, I figure.
Hopefully. I think we used like 5 different power tools today, which was fun. Yep, we built a wall. So if Trump's not going to do it, then we're going to do it.
Mexico didn't pay for ours, I'll tell you that.
That's true, and it's not quite as big as that would have to be. But that wall's probably not necessary. This wall was, so we did the best that we could to build it. Tonight we are talking about all things bench press, but we might as well crack a beer before we get started.
Let's do it. All right, so we're going to start with a bomber tonight, which code word for one of those big bottles. And I'm going to open it over the cooler because those of you who saw our episode with Tony Juncord know that I don't have very good luck with bottles. So before I reveal it to the world, I'm going to pop the top over the cooler in case things get wild and we have a clean open.
There we go.
All right, I'm super excited about this bottle because I had one to myself and it's one of the better beers I've tasted in a long time. Tonight we're doing Supa Sumo. This is a double IPA from Toppling, Goliath out in Iowa. As you can see, there's a gigantic sumo wrestler on the front. I hate sumo deadlifts, but I love this beer, so I'm pretty pumped.
You hate sumo deadlifts?
Hate sumo deadlifts.
Bold claim.
Yep, pouring into the official
Strength House podcast glass is here. Check it out, Strength House Podcast. You can find them on our site if you'd like one. If not, that's fine. But they do exist, and I know a lot of people asked for them, so we had them made.
Yep, a lot of you guys have picked yours up already. Thank you so much for supporting us. Got to have the proper glassware. I didn't really give it even pour. I'm going to hit you a little bit right here.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
Try not to pour.
Now you have spilled it.
Yep. All right, well, just a little bit. Right off the bat, this is a stanky beer. It's stanky in the best kind of way.
I'm going to put this here, and one of us is probably going to knock it over. But
Probably. I believe for those of you who give a shit when we do talk about beer, combination of Mosaic and Citra hops, two common ones in a lot of the juicy IPAs that we drink. Mosaic, like I said, I'm usually totally over it. Cheers to the first podcast.
To the first beer, not the first beer drank in the Strength House,
No,
obviously. Give me a break. We obviously drank beer the first day we were in here. But
I love this, man.
oh, that's really good.
Yeah. And I keep saying over and over, I'm over Mosaic hops. Those of you who are familiar with Mosaic know it's kind of got, to me, it tastes kind of like an apple juicy, like cidery kind of juiciness to it. But the Citra really plays up like a good amount of bitterness, and just I love this thing.
Yeah, this is awesome beer. As is pretty much everything we've ever had from Toppling Goliath.
Yep.
So, does not disappoint at all. Well, so tonight we're talking about the bench press. In light of the fact that you, Tony, have your first book coming out.
I do. So on September 19th, I'll be releasing Bench Like a Beast, which is my first full length, I guess you could say, product. It's going to be an ebook, which basically has a 10-week bench press program that I've tested on and off on myself and many of my clients really over the course of the past 4 or 5 years, I would say. I started to conceptualize this program in grad school before I knew what was what, but that was the first time I had ever bench pressed 3 times a week for an extended period of time. And I would say kind of the structure of this program took me from a 315 bench to a 350 bench over the course of 10 weeks. And that sounds like a gigantic jump, and I think it was probably exaggerated in my sense just because it helped me really dial in my technique. I'd never done that kind of high volume before. I used a lot of new assistance exercises that helped me beat some really tough sticking points, and lo and behold, just was able to make a lot of progress really quickly. So this product is a combination of a program to follow, as well as a very detailed how to bench press guide with a lot of instructional videos. And another big emphasis for me is being able to do high volume, high frequency bench pressing without beating yourself into the ground. So keeping your shoulders healthy, keeping your elbows healthy, keeping your lower back healthy with the right, kind of assortment of accessory exercises and mobility drills. So I'm trying to make it the most comprehensive bench press program out there, and in a couple of weeks we'll find out if I did that.
I'm sure you did. So let's dig into it a little tonight, just the different pieces. So with someone who's the product targeted towards? Can anyone excel on it? Should you already have some training experience? Could you be more of a beginner?
I would say that it's not necessarily geared towards the pure beginner, because somebody like that probably shouldn't be or can get away with a much more linear approach where you just kind of add weight to the bar each time you go out there, 5, 10 pounds, whatever, and make that very linear progression. This program is based more on kind of I call it a medium, low, high approach, where one day you're doing kind of a moderate amount of weight for a moderate amount of volume. The next day you're doing what I call like the low day, where it's lighter weights, but the volume is decently high, with the intent of building kind of that time under tension and building some muscle. And then the third benching day of the week is your heavy day, where you'll work up to a heavy double or a heavy single. That's not necessarily something I think beginners will benefit from, but when I set out there, like I said, it took me from a 315 bench to a 350 bench, which is what I would consider taking me from kind of like an intermediate to like a high intermediate, low advanced bench presser. And I think that's a point that a lot of people are stuck at. Most of the people who tested the bench, I would say most of the males went from like a low 200s to a mid 200s, and a lot of the females went from like a low 100s to a mid 100s, kind of taking you from that intermediate to like approaching an advanced lifter. So if I could say it's for anyone, it's for somebody who's really trying hard to dig out of that intermediate rut and become a more advanced bench presser in the long run.
Awesome. And I'm just going to go through kind of like the 6 questions here, but so that's kind of who it's for. Obviously, what it's for is to build your bench press. But with benching 3 times a week, do you think there's still an opportunity to increase your squat and deadlift? Is that something that's in there as well?
It's definitely designed to like maintain those. They don't fall off the table completely, but definitely took it with the idea of like the minimal effective dose. Just doing just enough work to make those lifts not decrease. And some of the lifters who have tried it have actually seen an increase over the long run, just because I think the lifters who did test this program, who saw an increase in their squat and their deadlift, knowing the lifters who did it were probably doing too much, like maybe like putting too much volume or maybe too much intensity even into those lifts, and just backing them off a little bit and doing a little bit more submaximal training, which everyone who watches this podcast knows we're huge fans of that. It seemed to be really effective. And the way that I approached it is that 1 week you're training the squat a little bit harder and the deadlift is a little bit less intense, and then it flip-flops. So you're never training the squat, the bench press, and the deadlift hard at the same time. So it does kind of have that, modulation or undulation, whatever you want to call it, and it's something that I think has worked pretty well. So it's not going to completely get rid of your squat and deadlift. You'll still train them hard, but you'll train them in a way that I think is intelligent when you're trying to emphasize the bench press, because you can't do everything balls to the walls at once.
Cool. All right, so let's get into the nitty-gritty of bench pressing, which might have to do with the program, and I'm sure some of it will not. We'll go off topic a little bit, but so the first thing that strikes me is that the biggest part of the approach that's different is the higher frequency.
Absolutely.
Why higher frequency with the bench? So they're training bench 3 times a week, like you said. How many days a week total are they training? And like, how can someone split up their bench press training to train more frequently, I guess?
Yep. So there are 2 different training options that I give: a 4-day per week training option and a 5-day per week training option. Both of them you're benching 3 days a week on non-consecutive days, and then you're either, for the 4-day approach, you're squatting and deadlifting on the same day, and then the 5-day approach, you're squatting one day, deadlifting the other day. But I chose 3 days a week just because I feel like that gives you enough practice. We say all the time that technique is so important, and the only way you're going to maintain that technique or get better is to practice often. And one of the biggest mistakes that I made in my training career early on was only benching once a week. You have your chest day, it's usually Monday. That's when you're doing your bench press, and you're trying to cram all that work into just one day, where you just completely obliterate yourself, and you never give that opportunity to practice the lift. So it made all the sense in the world to increase the frequency so you could practice your technique more and not have to just completely smash yourself every time you go out there. And I think you're a good example of somebody who gets away, I think, with your squat and your deadlift, at least training it once a week and doing pretty well. But you are also somebody who really emphasized to me that, like, the bench press of the 3 big lifts, the bench press is the one where you can get away with the highest frequency.
Yeah, I think bench press. So from a powerlifting context, you could call deadlift and squat lower body exercises or maybe more full body exercises, whereas the bench press, you're definitely not really taxing your lower half bench pressing. So I think since you're already training two of those huge compound movements in the squat and deadlift twice a week, not necessarily squatting twice and deadlifting twice, but they're getting 2 days.
Yep.
I think it's a must-have that the bench is in there at least 2 days. But we know that if you have the time and you can do it, even if you take, I'm pretty sure that don't quote me on it, but there's research that's going to show that even if you took the volley, let's say you took your normal 4-day split where you did squat, deadlift, and then bench again or a bench variation. If you took the same volume that you were doing, let's say on your squat day, and split it up over 3 days, you would still see better results because you're getting better technical practice, probably better. You're getting better recovery. You're getting faster, crisper reps, and plus, like we've talked about before, you have to warm up to your weights again, so you are probably adding just a touch of very, very submaximal volume as well.
Yep, and we know it all counts.
Yep.
Even as low as 50, 60%, those warm-up sets that you might not necessarily put that much stock in, that they are making a difference over the long term. You can build up thousands and thousands of pounds of volume over the course of a training cycle just from doing those extra warm-ups.
Yep. So when you have someone benching 3 times a week, are you taking the typical, like programs that I write or programs that I've written for you, are you taking a similar amount of volume that we normally program in 2 days and spreading it over 3? Or is it kind of like, here's 10 weeks and we're going to onslaught you with like a little bit more benching than you're used to?
It's definitely more the latter than the former. It's a lot of volume. And some of the lifters who have gone through it, did it without too much of an issue. Other people, it was a big time wake up call and it was just way more work than they'd ever done. But it's still largely kind of based on the Prelepin's chart where you have a certain percentage range, and it is all percentage based. It works much better for somebody who has a very, very accurate 1 rep max to base their training max upon. So on that moderate day, you're kind of working in that 75 to 80% range and trying to hit that optimal total amount of volume. On your second bench press day, the low day, it's closer. It's between 50 and 60%, for a lot more reps overall. And then on that third heavy day, you're hitting a couple doubles or a couple singles between 85 and 90%. I think the heaviest it goes over the entire 10 weeks is like 92.5% for 2 singles, which, I think a lot of people are used to doing more stuff like that on a regular basis. Hey, like, let's see how heavy we can go today. And it just becomes like a weekly max out. But just adding all that volume on the front end of the week is something that is challenging, I think, for some lifters to adjust to at first, but you get used to it. And we talked about it a little bit a couple weeks ago, the idea of doing the same thing over and over until it gets easy. And that first day of the week, that moderate day, is very much that way. Like, you keep it almost the exact same rep scheme, and people tend to go either one of 2 ways. Like, it gets way easier because their technique gets better and they get used to it. Or for some people, it gets harder because they're just building up a lot more fatigue. They accumulate that fatigue, so the same load becomes more challenging, which is not necessarily a bad thing either. So long answer to a short question. Most people felt like it was a big kick in the ass volume-wise, but I think that's what it takes to get a better bench press.
Cool. So they're doing a competition bench press or probably a close variation. Is every one of those 3 days just to have a competition bench press in it, or is it varied a little bit?
Yep, so all 3 days have your competition style bench press, but the moderate day has like a weak point training emphasis. So you're either going to do like a spoto press or a concentric pause bench press, something to work on like that low range sticking point. The low day has a lot of dumbbell bench pressing. So whether it's a flat dumbbell bench press, an incline bench press, something to focus on actually building some muscle mass. And then the third day has less variation. There's no actual like supplementary bench press. because you're just going in heavy, and then most of the rest of the training that day is like upper back and arms. Because one thing we found is that the upper back takes a beating because you're training it pretty hard every day. Benching 3 days a week and then doing 1 to 2 lower body days where you have some sort of deadlift or squat variation, which we know, taxes your upper back as well. So kind of that last day of the week, you bench heavy, just a bunch of assisted stuff, and get on out.
So what supplementary lifts, and I think this is something we've covered before, so we don't need to harp on it, but what are your favorite couple supplementary lifts, and how do you use them in a program like this?
Tons of rows, whether they're one-arm dumbbell rows, chest-supported rows, inverted rows, just a lot of horizontal pulling. I think for the raw bench presser, probably the lats are maybe a little bit overrated in their actual contribution to the bench press. It's still important in a big ass upper back, middle back, lats. It's all important, but just a lot of horizontal rowing to counteract all the horizontal pressing that you're doing, and just to give you a nice big stable base to bench from. There is some stuff in there that I would consider a little bit more on like the shoulder health side. So some free scapular motion pressing, whether it's push-ups, whether it's landmine presses, a decent amount of direct rotator cuff work, because that's something I think that just gets omitted from a lot of powerlifting programs. And when I first was kind of test running a lot of these programs on myself, I'd get beat up. Like my shoulders would hurt, my pecs would hurt, and then just from working with you and working with the rest of the trainers at Cressy Sports Performance, I learned a lot about how the shoulder works, how it functions, and how it doesn't take much to stay healthy. You just got to do it. Some of it's just kind of boring stuff. And you're somebody who pounded it into my head that you can train upper back every single day. It doesn't have to be heavy. You can do some rows, you can do some pull downs, even stuff like band pull aparts or like prone dumbbell Ys. Like that's all upper back stuff. And it doesn't take a lot out of you, so it's something you can do every single day.
Nice. How much stock do you put in like pec strength for increasing the bench press? That's something that I think I didn't do as much of, but in past year and a half, where I've seen my bench press go up a lot, I've had a newfound focus on training the chest a lot harder.
Yeah, that answers the question I was going to ask you, because you are the best bench presser in the room right now. There's only 2 of us in there, number one. But you made some astronomical progress on your bench press in the past, half year or so. And I would say a lot of that, the biggest change I've seen in you is that you train your chest directly a ton. I would say Bench Like a Beast doesn't have a lot of direct chest training in the idea of doing like a lot of flies and things like that, simply because the focus is so much on shoulder health, and I think a lot of that stuff can lend itself to getting into poor positions if you don't know what you're doing. But I feel like direct pec training is something that benefits somebody who's maybe a little bit more advanced than what this program is designed for, who's kind of run out of being able to progress just maximizing their technique. So you can get stronger by improving your technique. You can get stronger by just simply improving your ability to strain under heavy weight. You can improve your bar speed, or you can just get bigger muscles. And I feel like increasing the muscle size is such an obvious one, but until your technique is dialed in, to me it's a little bit secondary. Ideally you do it all at the same time, but if I can ask you a question, what are some of those direct chest exercises that you've started to implement into your training that have had the biggest carryover to your competition bench press?
Yeah, I mean, now we're talking about it, like thinking about it, I think in general I've seen, in order to get my bench press really moving again, I had to train the chest really aggressively, but also the shoulders and also the triceps, I would say. So I had to like break things down a little bit more. Whereas before, I think I did a lot more just bench pressing and then like spoto presses, concentric, like close variants of the bench press, and I didn't put as much stock into like pretty heavy accessory work to bring up the shoulders, the triceps, and the pecs. So I think one of the biggest ones, and I know it's not for everyone, but it's it's an exercise that's really never bugged my shoulders at all, is really heavy dips.
You were doing dips with a lot of weight strapped around your waist.
Yeah, because I weigh like 240, and so now I got up to doing dips with almost an extra, like 100 pounds. I think 100 pounds. So, doing dips in the mid to low 300s for reps. And I really do think dips are probably the closest exercise that mimics the same position that you're in the bench press. Because if you're in that bench press, you have those elbows tucked right next to your side. And if you get into a dip position, it's the same thing. So it's like extra reps at 80% or so on your bench press. So they're not for everyone, but I think there's a right and a wrong way to do them. They have to be progressed slowly too. You have to build up. I think there's something to be said for I'm a huge believer in there's not a lot of bad exercises. There's just a lot of bad implementation of exercises. So I think dips are one of those ones where if someone hasn't done them really before, you should just crush bodyweight dips for a long time and build up the mobility in your shoulders and the tissue tolerance to do that, because you're putting a pretty big stretch on the front of your shoulders, and a lot of people want to tell you that that's terrible for your shoulders, and it probably is if you're not prepared to handle it, but that's not a blanket statement. That's terrible for your shoulders. It's terrible for your shoulders if you don't do it correctly, or if you haven't prepared yourself to do it. So that flies, something Josh Bryant had me do a lot of that I hadn't done in since I was a kid, really.
Yep.
I didn't put a lot of stock into them. But then again, back when I was a kid, I couldn't do flies with more than 20, 25 pounds. So then to revisit them and realize I can do flies with 50, 60 pounds. And all of a sudden it just becomes just like a increased range of motion, I guess you could say, dumbbell bench press in some ways. And that's the way I would treat them. I wouldn't go super, super out wide with my arms straight. It would almost be like an extra wide neutral grip bench press. And one variation I really love on the flies is actually to keep your grip pronated the whole time, so your palms facing away from you. And just like you're going to bring down a bench press, except instead of bringing it just down, bring it down and out, and just stretch out the pecs a lot more.
Yeah, I think that teaches you to use your upper back correctly too, because if your shoulder blades are out of position, it's really going to put extra stress on the front of the shoulder. That's one where I had a hard time at first kind of feeling it out, but slow and steady, learn to control that range of motion. And I agree with you that there's this idea that shoulder extension, past a neutral position is bad for you. That's not true. You look at gymnasts, you look at people who will do ring dips and muscle ups and stuff, especially in the gymnastics world, and it's all about control and just making sure you're in control of that range of motion. I don't know if Duffy's watching, but he'd say control yourself, as he likes to say. But if you can get into a very extended position with your shoulders, but keep that ball in the socket, you're gonna be okay.
Yeah.
And that's a great way to train your chest and train your triceps. It's just when you get into this really lousy position where your chest caves forward and everything kind of rides forward into the front of the shoulder, that of course is a bad position to train in. So like you said, you got to build it up, you got to get used to it and learn to control that position, and then you can start adding weight and start adding tension and get after it from a hypertrophy standpoint.
Yeah, and this is a little off topic, but that's what I think is funny to me sometimes is we have a lot of these mobility experts and whatever, these mobility experts. And the whole thing is, controlling yourself through a large range of motion takes tension and takes focus. And in reality, if you know how to lift, you should already be doing that. Because I'm not saying I always knew how to lift correctly, but through lifting in lots of different gyms, after lots of different mentors and things like that, An exercise like a fly is a bodybuilding exercise, and it's all about tension and control and taking it through a full, long range of motion. And it's no different than doing those same things without any load, and just except for the fact that you get the benefits of, the resistance. So you'll actually get a lot stronger and bigger, which is never a bad thing if that's your goal. Lots of people make fun of me for my abbreviated warm-ups, but I'm like, a big believer in the fact that I think my training is well-rounded enough that I go through a lot of huge ranges of motion with tension and control, and I squat to depth and do all these other movements that I don't really feel like I need a huge warm-up to get going. I already have the ranges of motion. I just need to get my body temperature up a little bit and get going. Controlling yourself through a huge range of motion with tension is basically good weightlifting in my eyes.
And I think that's the range of motion, like that big stretch at the bottom of the fly, is a big differentiator between the fly and the bench press, and why the barbell bench press I don't think is a great hypertrophy exercise for the pecs. That's definitely not what fatigues first for me when I do a high rep set of bench press, just because you don't get that stretch position. And the whole point of the bench press, the powerlifting style bench press, which I'll go to the grave saying it's the right way to bench press, is to reduce the range of motion by arching your back and limiting the range of motion that your shoulder goes through. So you're never going to get that stretch on the pecs. And we know that that's kind of a big driver for hypertrophy. It's loading that eccentric through a long range of motion and getting that loaded stretch at the bottom. So to train the pecs, it's not so much the squeeze at the top that matters, it's the stretch at the bottom. So I think that's where, once the pecs become a limiting factor, which is probably not going to be an issue until you're very advanced, that's where you start adding in some of that stuff.
Yeah.
Looks like we have a question from our friend Michelle. I can't read the whole thing because it's too long. Michelle, if you could post the second half of that after I was doing, we'll answer it. But the part we can read, Michelle says, what do you feel is the contribution of technique to total lift versus volume of training? Coming off the big three, one technique change, and things are much different in my bench now. So technique versus volume, similar volumes to what I have now programmed, and I haven't had much increase in my one rep max. So I'd say the first thing is to give it time, because it takes a while to kind of build that up. Especially if you're just getting used to doing kind of that high volume of training. That's why I'm a big believer in not competing too often, because you never have that opportunity to kind of build up that phase by phase approach where you're going to do a lot of volume and then you're going to kind of transition into a more high intensity phase. But it all depends on the lifter. If they need all that practice and to do a lot of submaximal stuff just to iron out some technique issues, then I'll keep a lot of the stuff very submaximal and not do really any heavy training. But at the same time, a lot of lifters, especially for the bench press, they do really well kind of up to that medium heavy weights, maybe 80%, 85%. They're able to keep that technique together, but things really do start to fall apart at 90%, 92.5%, 95%. So that's where you kind of have to pick your battles and give those people exposures to heavier weights for them to iron out their technique issues under heavy weight. Some people keep everything looking the same all the way up until their one rep max, and those people are few and far between, and those are typically very good lifters.
Yeah. Oh, you still got a sip left. I was going to say, I got some stuff in my beer over here.
Some residue.
I got some residue.
Well, if we had a beer fact, I would explain what that is.
We'll bring the beer fact back next time. We've been a little busy.
We have.
All right, so as we transition beers, I'm going to step away from the bench press for a moment.
Oh, okay, fine.
We'll come right back to it. And I was going to ask, what has been your most favorite and least favorite part of the last week since we have begun setting up the gym?
Oh boy, this is actually what I was going to suggest that our topic be, but you were so kind to let me talk about my Benchpress Ebook. My least favorite thing, I would say, is moving those goddamn mats. Those mats are a pain in the ass.
I'm gonna go rinse this really quick because it's full of residue.
We got these 4x6 horse stall mats. They're rubber, they smell bad, they leave like little rubber pellets all over the place, but they are the most economical way to lay down flooring in a gym. So they're designed for horses to poop on, but they're gonna be on the floor of our gym. And I think any garage gym, any warehouse gym you see is gonna have those, but they're just such a pain in the ass to move. Thank God Greg has a truck, they wouldn't fit in my little Honda Civic. My favorite part so far? Favorite part is just feeling the love from all the people who are supporting us. The people who have come in and helped us paint, helped us move stuff, people who have wished us well from near and far. It's been really, really heartwarming to see how many people want to see us succeed.
Yep.
You know, and sometimes you take that for granted, how many people are in your corner and rooting for us, but thank you everyone who has helped us in small ways, big ways, whatever. It's felt really, really good, and that's helped get me through moving all those fucking mats, thinking about all the people who want us to succeed.
All right, so that is a statement that was well worth it and it had to be made, but I'm still going to hold you to having to answer the question specifically within the facility. What is your favorite thing that you've had to do yet so far?
Favorite within the facility? I like painting.
You're a painting guy.
It's like almost like meditative to me. And it's very satisfying to me to see something go from like start to finish and have like a very, what's the word, like contrast, I guess. Like you take like these walls that were like just sterile white before, and you throw some paint on it and you're able to see it go from white to black, or in the case of the stripe, you know, white to purple, and that's very satisfying to me.
Yeah, okay. All right.
What about yourself? What do you not like? What do you like?
All right, well, first I'm going to pour this.
Okay. Yeah, speaking of Michelle.
Heavy Mettle double IPA. And thanks to Michelle for picking this up for Tony, and thanks for Tony for sharing it with me.
Michelle probably is on the top of the leaderboard for beers supplied to the Strength House podcast so far, so
yeah.
Cheers, Michelle.
We were going to do the 2 stouts she gave us, but we're going to save that for...
We had to drink that Sumo before it
that could be next
lost
week.
its freshness.
Or a more wintry. Heavy Metal's 9.2%, huh?
Yikes! Might be sleeping over. Looks like a Trillium, smells like a Trillium.
It looks just like the beer we just drank, actually.
It does. I don't know much about what's in Mettle, and I would say Trillium is probably a little bit less public about like what goes in what, if that makes sense, like what hops, what malts they use, that whole kind of thing. But this is a staple. This is one that I know people get really hyped up for. It's a double IPA version of Mettle, Mettle, but I like to play on heavy metal because I enjoy heavy metal music.
Yes. Just in case you didn't think we were getting our hands dirty, I can't touch this white can without dirt coming off of it.
You can see, I mean, I guess I don't have that much paint on me right now, but
I got sawdust on me, paint, everything. It's awesome.
It's in the crevices.
It's everywhere. It's everywhere.
So thank you, Michelle, for this beer.
Let's give it a sip here.
That's good. That is like signature Trillium.
Yeah. Sorry, but that's better than Super Sumo.
I mean,
it's different.
You're entitled to your opinion.
It's more crisp and refreshing to me.
Yep. Tastes like hopped up pineapple juice.
All right, so my least favorite and favorite. Something just came out of there. Well, my least favorite. Well, my My least favorite is a combination thing because I already can't stand incompetence just in general. Like I have this really, this problem with just incompetent people. And I'm sure I've been incompetent at times, but...
Makes me scared to be your business partner.
But, let me finish. At what I do, I am not incompetent. So if I go to somebody who works somewhere or works for somewhere, I expect them to be competent at the job that they're doing. And severe incompetence, which is way too common, drives me nuts. Especially because I feel like half of the time I could probably do what they're doing with no training. So, I'm pretty patient most of the time. I'm very patient with people that I work with in the gym.
That's good. You're gonna need it.
I have less patience when I need something simple done by someone else that I can't do myself because I'm just not allowed to, and they're incompetent.
Are you gonna call anybody out? Are you gonna get into specifics?
No, it's not like people that we know. I'm just saying, like, FedEx, the United States Postal Service. Who else?
Electricity.
The electric company.
Internet.
They all suck.
Yeah.
So if you work for one of those companies, I hope that you don't suck. If I know you and you work for one of those companies, you probably don't. But whoever we had to deal with in all of those standpoints sucks.
Yep. And I guess I'll revise my least favorite part because this is a story worth telling. Sorry if you're listening, you've already heard the story in person, but I took a little drive in your truck down south to a very well-known fitness equipment distributor yesterday morning, and got some great equipment. The equipment's great. We're actually using it as a table right now. And they packed up my truck, your truck, me driving it, and said, it's going to be fine. Everything's packed. We got, a push sled. We got some plyo boxes. We got some med balls. We got some foam rollers. And so I'm making the hour and 20-minute drive from Warwick, Rhode Island, up to Worcester. And I make it just past the exit to my house in North Providence. And I didn't even realize it happened, but 3 of them big-ass boxes flew right out of the back of the truck. I didn't even notice because my rearview mirror was blocked by one of the boxes I had put in the cab. And I'm driving along in the right lane, going slower than I usually go, that's for sure. And this lady pulls up to the left of me. She's waving. She's like, "Your boxes!" I'm like, oh, shit. So I pull over to the right, throw my hazards on, get out of the truck, look in the back. I'm thinking one box maybe fell out. Nope, 3 boxes. The old, the 24-incher, the 18-incher, and the 12-incher, all the big ones. So God knows where they are. Plyo boxes are not cheap. So my first concern is we're out a lot of money. The second concern is I might have hurt somebody. Specifically in that order. I'm not going to lie that I was worried about people getting hurt first. Not at all. I was worried about all the money that just went down the drain. I'm sorry. So I did 2 loops around on 146 in Rhode Island to try to find the boxes. Couldn't find them. So I just ended up driving back to my house, calling the state police, and being like, yeah, I was driving on 146 North and a couple boxes flew out. And before I could even finish my sentence, they're like, yep, we know. We pushed them off. They're just south of the Mineral Spring exit. So Mineral Spring exit, that's where I get off from my house. I go all the way back around, find them. In the meantime, it started pouring down rain, thunder and lightning, terrifying black, tornado clouds. I'm thinking, this is it. This is the end. So I finally find the boxes. There are 3 of them staggered about 10 yards apart, pushed all the way to the median of a 3-lane highway. So I pull your truck off to the right, throw the hazards on. I have to wait for traffic to dissipate for me to frogger my way across 3 lanes of traffic, grab this big ass box in my fucking flip-flops and waddle my way back across the road and try not to get hit by anything, try to not drop the box. So that was quite an experience, and I would say that's probably been my least favorite part of the moving process so far.
Okay.
So I guess the lesson is tie your shit down in the back of your truck.
Yeah.
Get some bungee cords, get some rope.
Even when it's tied down, so we've made quite a few trips in the truck picking stuff up. And I don't have I don't have like a full-size pickup. I have like a V6 pickup. I have a Nissan Frontier, so it's like it's a smaller bed. So we have to pretty much move everything with the tailgate down. And surprisingly, it's fit everything now. It's been a great truck. But I am about ready to be done with like nerve-wracking drives where I'm like, I hope nothing flies out. I hope nothing, is anything coming out? All right. I hope nothing flies
Cars
out.
lined up behind you because you're going so slow.
Yeah. But we've only had one thing fly out, and I wasn't there, so you had to serve that one on your own.
Yeah, that was just like of course this would happen to me type moment, because I'm not a truck guy, I'm not handy by any means, and you trusted me with your truck, and I managed to litter plyo boxes all over 146 North in Rhode Island. Thank God nobody died.
Nobody died. We didn't lose any plyo boxes. No plyo boxes. 4 people were harmed. Just a great story.
Yeah.
My most favorite thing so far, I'll piggyback on it's been awesome, everyone helping us and giving us support. It's been really, really cool. But I think I'm pretty fucking proud of the walls that were built today.
Yep. I can't wait for our wives to see that. They've been super supportive all along, but I would say they're somewhat naysayers on our construction ability, and well warranted for myself. I could never have done that. But you're the Bob Vila of our crew.
I'm trying to grow my beard back out so I can get my Al Borland on. But yeah, no, my wife. I told her I was gonna build some stuff, and she was like, "What? The table saw? What? You're gonna cut your hand off? You can't build that." And like, she seems to have forgotten that I spent every summer growing up working like odd-end construction jobs with my friend Brian. So I had a lot more direction back then. Like cut this using this and do this. This is a little bit more freeballing it, I guess you could say. But at least I've used all these tools before, and I think we did. If you see me gazing off in the distance, I'm just looking at the walls.
Just admiring.
I think I did a pretty good job.
It might be worthwhile to do like a virtual walkthrough with our people. You wouldn't be able to see it on the video after the fact, but the people tuning in live. If you stay at the end, we'll do a tour of the facility at the end. So I'm burping all over the place. If you're here at the end, we'll do a walkthrough. You can see my walls. You can see some other stuff. But that's good, because you know what the combo was? It's a beautiful synergy. I got to do my favorite thing today, which was use power tools and build something. And you were right behind doing the painting of those walls, which was your favorite thing to do. Mm-hmm. And so, bam. There it is.
That's how it works.
That's fucking teamwork.
What's your favorite dish? I'm not going to cook it, but I'll order it from Zanzibar. All right, we should probably get back to the bench press.
I'd say we stay with Tenacious D.
Wonder Boy.
All right, so I've got a question for you. One thing I like to talk about a lot with the bench press is leg drive, because I think that's one thing that differentiates a good bencher from a great bencher is the ability to use leg drive, because it just makes such a difference in the amount of weight you can use. You've experimented with foot position before, kind of trying like the feet flat, trying the feet tucked back with the heels up. What caused you to choose the foot position that you've used, and why do you think that that's helped you bench more than the position you didn't choose? Awkward way to ask it, but I'll let you explain it.
I think I understand the question. Well,
you've used both. You chose one. Why did you choose one over the other?
Well, I think I think the first thing I'll say is if you're not like set, I don't think set's the right word, but if you're not seeing really great results and it's really comfortable with the way you're doing something right now, I'm a huge advocate for just trying all the different ways. So, with bench press, that means you could bench like heels. Let's just say everything from having your feet way tucked out underneath you to having your feet out in front of you. That said, you have to do them for an extended period of time. And by extended period of time, I mean I bench with my heels up for maybe like 3 months. The second thing I'll say to that is, if you really want to know if that's going to be helpful for you, or if you really, which I think it will, and I'll get to that in a second, train with someone who does do that successfully. So you used to, and now you're kind of experimenting another way.
Yep.
But
got to give it its fair shake, though. That's the thing. Like in every training session, I want to hook my heels back, but I keep telling myself I got to give this heels flat thing a fair try.
Yeah. So you were a big heels up proponent. Everything you did was heels up. And at the time, Ben outbenched me by a lot. And so I was like, all right, let me try this heels up thing, because I've been lifting for a long time, and the bench press was like always my nemesis. I had gotten sort of proficient with it and then lost it, and the whole time it was just a mess. So leg drive was something I never really had. Bar path, which is something we can talk about, something I never understood. And I want to say that I had trained with some pretty good lifters, some very solid lifters, and the bar path thing had never really been brought up, which is interesting. But going heels up and forcing myself into this position for me that was like so passively tight that my legs wanted to shoot forward and so to leg drive properly, you should be pushing yourself in such a way that it would slide you off the bench. Not even into the bench, but literally off the bench. And when I would set myself heels up, it was almost forced. Like, it was so tight for me to do that it was like inherently I was already pushing into the ground and sliding myself off the bench. And as the weights got heavier, I realized that being heels up at my size on the bench, at least for me, I just felt really unstable, like taking those weights out. Like I would rock side to side because my feet were so narrow. But for once in my life, it taught me what the feeling of leg drive was. So it was actually almost instantaneous that once I put my feet back out where I was comfortable and in a position where I felt like I could recreate the exact same feeling of driving like that, which happened for me to be like my feet a little bit out in front of my knees, it was just a matter of time. My bench press had increased from that day until now. It's steadily been going up from anywhere from like, it was in maybe like the low 300s to now the low 400s. So it was pretty close to like 100 pounds gained on the bench in a year and a half.
It makes such a difference. And I think that something that I've started to implement into some of my lifters programs is specifically prescribing foot position. And like if a lifter is doing something, if a lifter, their competition lift is with their heels off the ground, their feet hooked back, I'll specifically program in some like feet out front, keep the heels flat, take away that leg drive that maybe helps them so much. But your experiment with foot position really helped me understand that leg drive is leg drive. It's the same intent no matter where your feet are placed. It's just executed a little differently based on your foot position. It's all leg extension. You're not trying to extend your hips. That's going to lift your ass off the bench and not necessarily contribute to pushing the bar backwards. Talking about bar path, like you mentioned, that same intent, different position, so it's just executed a little differently. But I think by combining both feet position, foot position, whichever one it is, into a lifter's program can help them kind of understand that a little bit. And if they're not somebody who's like firmly, they haven't chosen that position yet as like their foot position, it can help them differentiate which one helps them execute that leg drive the best way so that they can define it and say like, okay, if I have to go in and max out on the bench press today, here's where I'm going to put my feet because I get the best leg drive out of it.
Absolutely. I could do 10, 15, 20 minutes on what I've learned from trying every different stance with each different lift. And honestly, thinking about it now, that's been a huge a huge part of my lifting career and success. I think as a coach, I don't make people do that because I feel like as a coach, I put myself through it so that I can look at someone and be like, but sometimes, yeah, I'll be like, hold on, do this, see what that feels like, okay. Because the other thing I got from being a heels up bencher for that quarter of a year was learning how to arch and get my butt on the bench better. So I set up now into a heels up bench and then hold the position the best I can while I shimmy my feet out to where I want them. So my whole bench press is actually based off of the heels up setup. It's just that I don't feel stable enough keeping them there to handle like heavier weights.
Yep, I'm a big fan of that too. Like hook your feet back as far as you can, arch around your feet to create the biggest arch possible, and then kind of wiggle your feet into position so that you maintain that tightness. Some people can just lay down on the bench with their feet, out in front and arch without any sort of like that passive leverage. But I think by hooking your feet back, arching around your feet, and then wedging your feet into the ground gives you kind of the best of both worlds.
Yeah, absolutely. There's another part to your question, but I forget what it was.
I don't remember, but
it has
you gave me the answer I wanted. Well, I've definitely I've changed my stance a little bit on heels up as being the far superior leg drive position, and it was almost by accident. It was really just I hurt my hip deadlifting. I can't remember what I pulled, but I was pretty happy with it, and I slammed the bar down in celebration, and my right hip / TFL just said, "Fuck you," and I could barely walk for. And not an exaggeration, I asked my wife, I could barely walk for a couple days. Like going upstairs, forget about it. And as I was recovering, just hooking my feet that far back really bugged my hip. So I'm like, okay, get my feet out in front, doesn't bug me as much. And the first heavy training session after that happened, it seemed to click. And I'd never really been able to understand flat-footed leg drive before, but I would say after you had that experiment, and it kind of made sense in my mind, I got hurt and then tried flat-footed leg drive for the first time under heavy weight, and everything just kind of seemed to fall into place. So I've been rolling with that exclusively for a while now, and I think I benched as much as 400 with my feet flat, which is about a 95-pound flat-footed PR. I think I've never tried anything, really over like the low 300s that way. But just the idea that it's all the same, you're trying to do the same thing, your feet are just in just a different position, that made it all come together for me.
Yep, absolutely.
Like you say at all our Big 3 seminars, there are a lot of constants in these lifts. There are small variations, but there's some like core tenets of each squat, the bench, and the deadlift that really stay consistent throughout, no matter what kind of lifter you are, no matter what you're doing. Some of the stuff has to stay the same.
It's probably true in like any context. I mean, the thing that made me start to think about that was actually baseball, because growing up as a hitter in baseball, I had a hitting coach who would often tell me like there's constants. We would look at all kinds of different major league hitters, and we would just fast forward to the point where they started to actually attack the baseball. And, obviously if you watch Major League Baseball, you see a bazillion different batting stances. Like, there's people who can mimic all the batting stances, and it's awesome, because if you didn't do that as a kid and you were into baseball, that's crazy. But there's all these signature batting stances, and they're all just ways for the guys to get into the groove and get a rhythm and what's comfortable with them. And lifting's the same way. Everyone has their batting stance. But when it comes time that the bar is breaking off the ground, or coming off of your chest, or coming out of the hole with the squat, everything starts to look a lot more alike, or has some constants. And so those are the things that we like to harp on as coaches, and I truly believe that's the right way to coach, just like that's the right way to coach an athlete in their sport. You don't take away that person's crazy batting stance if it makes them feel comfortable and gets their rhythm going and keeps them loose. You just make sure that when it comes time at contact with the ball, so on and so forth, that everything is lined up in the right spot. You can do whatever the fuck you want on the bench press as long as you have leg drive at the right time that's going in a horizontal force direction. Your elbow stays under the bar throughout the entire lift, and you have the correct bar path. I feel like you're good to go. Yep. It doesn't matter if you like to bring it down super fast, or you like to bring it down slow, or you like to do whatever, whistle while you bench press. It doesn't matter. But those things have to happen to make it work.
I'm always amazed by people who can like talk during their set. That happens with female lifters especially. I could very easily call out some of my female power lifters who are able to like unrack the bar and then say something, you know? And I've just never been able to do that. Get so tight, hold my breath, can't even be like, rah, 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 can't say anything.
I'm a big talker.
Talker while lifting.
Yep. All right, so we've hit the hour mark on this episode. We've got some solid bench press talk in.
Yep.
We've talked about the new facility, and you made it to the end of the show. So if you are with us now, which is not a lot of you on Instagram because the video ended. All right, you guys are tuning back in. All right, so we're going to wrap things up for tonight. We've hit an hour, but since you made it to the end of the show, we are going to give the virtual tour that we promised. So if you want a virtual tour of the facility,
here we go.
Here we go. All right. Oh, you're doing it that way?
Yeah.
All right, guys,
I mean,
so,
I don't know if I can flip-flop it. I guess I can.
Yep.
Doink.
So this is what we got so far, guys.
I got the Facebook peeps.
We got some black wall, purple stripes. All right. Foam rollers, PVC pipes. Still got cement floors. Here's the wall I was talking about.
The Great Wall of Robins.
We built this wall. We're spray painting some plates. We got a bunch of mats that still need to get set up. Tony already painted that wall. We got a sled and a dumbbell rack. Sled came in yellow, unacceptable. Bright yellow sleds are stupid, so we painted it black.
Hold on, are we gonna circle around to our actual training area at the end?
Yeah, I'm gonna get it. This is our office area at the moment.
A lot of burritos.
We got burritos. Uneaten burrito. That's gonna be eaten in a second, no problem. We got a football, tools, my computer.
A lot of Monster. I would say the only thing that's been consumed more than burritos in this facility are white and purple Monsters.
White and purple Monsters. We got donuts from Tony's mom and dad. We got a printer. Bam.
I haven't owned a printer since college.
Let's see what else. This is the wall. I built that motherfucker. This is outside. So we got a bunch of room outside to do stuff.
Yeah.
Still got plywood in the truck. We got our other wall over here and like 5,000 more mats. Recycling bin full of beer we already drank.
It doesn't look like that much, I guess.
We got this ugly corner over here that we haven't done anything yet, but we will tomorrow.
We got an Atlas stone that we found in the parking lot.
We found an Atlas stone in the parking lot.
There's when I tried to paint the floor by accident.
This is probably our most beautiful wall over here. And we got our training area. So this is set up so far so we can train, and we've been training our women's powerlifting team. And hell, if you're in the area, come by and get a lift. Bare bones shit going on, but we're still making it happen. We told you guys we wouldn't miss training sessions, and we've held our promise.
Yep.
So,
pretty simple so far.
that's the gym. Are we doing the office area too?
We don't have to do the office area yet.
All right, so the office area you guys will have to wait for. But we got an office and a lounge and cool stuff that you'll have to wait until another time to see. But that's it so far. It's coming along. All right.
I gotta say, man, super proud of what we've been able to do so far. Can't wait to share it with the world. It's gonna be great.
Absolutely.
Feels good to put our own spin on it, our own touch on it. We got more equipment coming.
We have a lot more equipment coming.
We've been getting a lot done with a little so far, but that's the exciting part. We've still been able to train hard. It just shows you it's definitely taught me to go back to the basics, and you don't need a ton of fancy stuff to train hard and to get strong. And I think that really goes with our training philosophy. And while we do have a lot more stuff coming, it's going to stay simple, and we're going to stick to the basics, and that's all you need.
Most people are nowhere near proficient in the basics, and even when you are, I'm looking forward to going back to them a little bit. We'll have some bells and whistles and things like that, and obviously add them over time. But it's gonna be super fun. It already is super fun. So a couple housekeeping notes before we wrap up. We have
Glasses.
a good amount, not a ton, but we've sold a lot of them, but we still have some of them. Strength House Podcast glasses. Enjoy the podcast, enjoy a beer in the Strength House Podcast glass.
Yep.
And these are super cool, guys. People were asking about hats. We made some really cool hats with our signature barbell logo on them, black and purple. And this is actually a leather patch branded on the front. Some guys from Branded Bills made these for us. So these are extremely limited edition, really awesome snapback hats that we have. Those are also on the site. And we're hopefully about 3 weeks away from opening this damn gym. So if you know anyone in Worcester, if you're a fan of what we do, definitely let them know that we'll be opening up shop. We'd love to spread the good word of strength to them as well.
Yep.
Any last notes from you?
Bench Like a Beast coming out September 19th. Stay tuned for that. Like I said, full-blown ebook, how to bench press, a 10-week program, lots of instructional videos on all the exercises. Check out benchlikeabeast.com for a little promo video and some details coming up, but that will be available to the world September 19th. So that is my life's work so far outside of this gym. I'd really appreciate it if you checked it out, and I'm looking forward to sharing that with everybody.
Awesome. Check out benchlikeabeast.com. Check out thestrengthhouse.com. And stay tuned. Next week, we'll be coming back at you with another podcast.
Yep.
Happy Friday. Happy weekend. Peace out.
See ya.